Alright kiddos, today we are going to talk about writing equations for graphs, and a lot of this is from graphs. A lot of this is going to be review because we have gone from a graph to an equation before. What's not going to be a review is the new part of this, because we're going to learn how to write an equation in something called standard form, and when I get there I will tell you what that means. But just to review real quick, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. And so to write an equation in slope-intercept form, you need both the slope and the y-intercept. You have to know both of those things. So for number one here, I've got a graph. We're going to fill in this box with the slope and the y-intercept, and then we're going to just write the equation. We're going to go find the y-intercept first because it's the easy one to find. It crosses the y-axis right here at -6. And my slope, just going to find two pretty points, draw my right angle so I can count, is up 2 and over 1, so my slope is 2. So in slope-intercept form, the equation of that line is going to be y equals slope 2x minus the y-intercept 6. And so that is the equation of that line in slope-intercept form. I found my y-intercept, used that to go to another point to find my slope, and then I just plugged it in. So we're going to go back and review. We're going to describe this graph in comparison to the linear parent function. Remember, the linear parent function is y equals x. So we want to compare these two. Well, y equals x has a slope of 1. My graph has a slope of 2, so this graph is steeper because the slope is bigger. My parent function has a y-intercept of 0 because there's nothing added or subtracted, but my graph has a slope or a y-intercept of -6. So it is also translated down 6 units because it went from 0 to -6. So all of that is a review. Now we have to learn this thing called standard form. Standard form is a way to write a linear equation that is not slope-intercept form. Standard form looks like this: ax plus by equals c. And in standard form, a, b, and c are integers, which means they have to be whole numbers. They cannot be fractions. And a has to be positive. If it is a negative, then it is not in standard form. So a, b, and c are integers, so you should have no fractions in standard form, and a, the number in front of the x, has to be positive. Now when it is in standard form, the number in front of the x is not the slope. It has to be written in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, in order for slope to be in front of the x. Standard form it does not give us a lot of information, but occasionally you are asked to write an equation in standard form, so that's something we're going to practice. So for number 2, we've got a graph. We're going to write the equation both in slope-intercept form and then in standard form, because it's easiest to start in slope-intercept form and then rearrange so that it is standard form. So the y-intercept for this graph looks like it's right here in between 0 and 1, which I would call 1/2. Or 0.5, you can use either one. And then my slope, let's find two pretty points. So I'm going to use another one that is a 1/2 because they're going to work for me. So I'm going to go from here over to here. Well, I went down, and since these are in the middle, I got to count halves, so I went down, to the middle here is 1, and to this middle here is 2. So I went down 2 wholes and over 1, 2, 3. So my slope is going to be -2 over 3. And we can try that again. Let's see if this point I go down 2 and over 1, 2, 3, I end up at a point on the line. So that works. So I have my slope and I have my y-intercept. So in slope-intercept form, we're going to write it as y equals -2/3 x plus 1/2, and I'm going to use the fraction and not the decimal, and I will show you why in just a minute. So now they want us to write it in standard form, so I've got to make it look like this: ax plus by equals c. So I need x and y to be on the same side, and then we'll worry about everything being an integer and no negative a's in just a minute. So I need to get this negative 2/3 x over here with the y, which means, let's rewrite it so that I can show you what I'm doing step by step. If I want to move this negative 2/3 over, I'm going to add 2/3 x so it cancels on one side so I can move it to the other side. And I'm going to put my x term first, so I have 2/3 x plus y equals 1/2. Well, I'm good with one thing. The number in front of my x, a, is already positive, so I've taken care of that part. But the problem is I have fractions. I cannot have fractions in standard form, so we're going to have to fix that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this entire equation by a number so I can get rid of both fractions at the same time. If I multiply by a 3, I will only get rid of this fraction, and then I'll have to multiply by 2 to get rid of this one. But if I come up with a common multiple for 3 and 2 and I multiply by that common multiple, I can get rid of them both at the same time. Well, 3 and 2 have a common multiple of 6. So I'm going to multiply this entire, both sides of this, by 6 so I can get rid of my fractions at the same time. And here's how I do a whole number times a fraction. I'll do the whole number times the numerator. Well, 6 times 2 is 12, so this becomes 12 over 3x. And yes, I know I still have a fraction. It's okay. Now I'm going to do 6 times y, because remember, you have to multiply 6 times everything. You can't just leave out a piece. 6 times y becomes 6y. And then on the other side, 6 times 1 is 6 over 2. Now look at what happens to my fractions. 12 over 3 reduces to 4x plus 6y, and 6 over 2 reduces to 3. This is standard form of the original equation I had. When I have all the fractions in there, it's not standard form, it's just a weird written equation. This is standard form because I have a positive a and all of my numbers are integers or whole numbers. So let's do a couple more examples just to get used to it. So number 3, I have this lovely horizontal line and it wants us to write the equation of the line. Well, let's do slope and y-intercept first because it asks for them. The y-intercept is right here, which looks like it's 1, 2, 3, negative 4. My slope, since that is a horizontal line, is 0 because all horizontal lines have 0 slope. And if you remember, horizontal lines have 0 slope and they're always y equals. So my equation is going to be y equals, and if you will look, y equals negative 4 because that's my y-intercept, and everywhere on this line y equals negative 4. So that's my equation. Now number 4. It asks for the equation in slope-intercept and standard, which is kind of silly because it's going to be exactly the same. And I'll show you what I mean. Because I have a lovely vertical line here. And they have asked for the equation of this vertical line. So let's talk about it. Slope and y-intercept. Well, slope, since it's vertical, is undefined. So we're just going to have to say the slope is undefined. I don't even have a number for it. My y-intercept, there isn't one because it never crosses the y-axis. But if you will remember, vertical lines have undefined slope and are always x equals. So my equation is going to be x equals, and right here, x equals 3. So in standard form, it's exactly the same thing. There's no big secret there. It's still just x equals 3. So now we're going to translate this into inequalities, because inequalities and linear equations, when you go to write the functions for them, the operation is the same. You do all the same stuff. So this one right here, first of all, it is a dotted line, which means that I am not going to have an or equal to symbol. It's just going to be less than or greater than. Here's the other thing to look at. Let's go ahead and figure out what our symbol needs to be. If I am looking at my y-intercept, I'm going to have to know it anyway, and I look at where the shading is this direction, which is up, which means that I have shaded above my line, so I'm going to have greater than as my symbol because I have shaded everything above the line. It is just greater than because that is a dotted line and not a solid line. So now I have to worry about slope and y-intercept. So I'm going to erase my little arrow I drew here. The y-intercept of that, it looks like, is at negative 1. So I'm going to say my b is negative 1, but I'm also going to have to know my slope. So I'm going to have to find another pretty point, and it's a little difficult when you have a dotted line to find pretty points, but it's not the toughest thing ever. And so it looks like there's a pretty point right here. And so if I draw my right angle and then I count that, it went down 1, 2, 3 and over 1. So my slope is -3, and I can check it again. I can go down 1, 2, 3 and over 1, and look, I'm still on the line. So we're good. So my equation is going to become, or my inequality is going to be y is greater than -3x minus 1, because I'm still going to put it in the mx plus b form. So let's do the next one. This one has a solid line, so it's going to be an or equal to kind of symbol, and if you look, it is shaded above, so it's going to be y is greater than or equal to, because now my line is solid, so I get to underline it. My y-intercept for this is at 4. My slope is going to be right here, so I went up 1 and over 2, so my slope is 1/2. So my inequality is going to be y is greater than or equal to 1/2 x plus 4. Now, that's all there is to that. Now let's talk about putting this in standard form, because you need to see another thing go to standard form. So let's say that my equation was y equals 1/2 x plus 4, and I needed it to be in standard form, so I have to make it look like this. So I need x and y on the same side, so I've got to move this 1/2 x, so I will have to subtract 1/2 x. So I end up with -1/2 x plus y equals 4. Well, I have a negative a, because the number in front of x is a. I have a negative a, and I have a fraction. I'm going to get rid of both at the same time. To get rid of the fraction, I would multiply by 2, and to get rid of the negative, I would multiply by a negative. So I want to multiply by -2 everything. So when I do this, this negative and this 2 cancel, so I'm left with 1x. And then when I multiply here, I get -2y. And then when I multiply here, I get -8. So in standard form, it becomes x minus 2y equals -8. Every other number in this standard form can be negative, except for the one in front of the x. The one in front of x must be positive. The rest of them, it's fine. It doesn't matter. But that's standard form. It's now written this way. That's going to be the most challenging part of your assignment tomorrow. And if that's as challenging as it gets, y'all got this. So I will see you then. Have a good evening.